lot of people have been talking noise about the Big Red. When Rayola slings it, you get on your feet, and I want 4 quarters of smash mouth football!
Welcome, Husker fans. Thank you for tuning in to Big Red Radio, the Husker Talk Show. I am your host, Caleb Jenneret. Next to me, as always, is my co-host, Zach Jenneret. Still trying to figure out things with my setup, so that's why I'm holding my mic. But I did get a few things put up on the wall, opposed to last week. Obviously, got the Big Red Radio here. Got my jersey here. Actually, new Rams senior analyst. Got his jersey on right here. But yeah. So we're going to talk about Colorado today. Obviously, we're going to talk about UTEP a little bit first. But first, make sure you follow the socials, all in the description: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. That's where you're going to get all your extra content, your Bet the Mortgage content, if you follow along with that. We did pretty well, but that's not this video. But yeah. Zach, you got anything before we get into it?
No, not really. I will be out at the Colorado game this weekend, out and about, roaming the town, and obviously in the stadium as well. I'll be in the student section though during the game. So
yeah, no, it'll be a fun one. I couldn't make it this time this year. This is the game that, if you could go to one game, you'd probably want to go to this one. Fun fact, I've never been to a game that Nebraska has won in person. So it's probably a good thing that I'm not going. But no, it definitely would have been a fun game to go to, and I'm definitely excited that you get to go. But yeah, so let's get right into it. We're going to talk about UTEP first. We're going to each do 2 takeaways. My biggest takeaway was the O-line play. I know it's UTEP, but still, it's looked bad against worse teams before. The pass pro was good. There was only 1 sack, which has now been said it was Dylan's fault, miscommunication stuff. I was worried about Turner Cochran a little bit, but he looked good. I think he was like he was the 3rd highest graded lineman behind, Bryce Benhart was far and away the best, and then Micah Mazuka was second. He's a beast in the middle. But then it was Turner Cochran at tackle, and that's a positive thing to see, obviously, because he's gone through some ups and downs, to say the least. Losing a spot to Prohaska. Prohaska gets hurt this year. A lot of people say Turner would have won it anyway, but finally gets his spot back and looked good against UTEP. We're going to see what he looks like against Colorado. We'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, that was my first takeaway was, how good the offensive line looked, and I've seen a clip going around a lot. One of I think Gabe Irvin's first touchdown run, just the absolute push that the line got on that touchdown run. It was just insane. If we can do that, we'll get into what we can do if the offensive line plays up to par this week. But yeah, my first takeaway was how well the offensive line looked.
Yeah, for me, I think that O-line one is a really good one, but also how balanced the Nebraska team looks. So we had 223 yards rushing, and we also had 284 yards in passing. So pretty balanced out there. 3rd quarter, we were still throwing the ball. Dylan wasn't in. Even 4th quarter, we threw the ball a little bit. And so that rushing isn't just because we ran it at the end. We actually ran it, throughout the game. We also had a few deep passes in there, but it was very balanced, and it kept the defense on their toes. That's what allowed for, most of those big runs, big throws, under throws as well, is those like power runs. So a lot of people don't care about.
Yeah, for sure. And my last takeaway from that game, I had a lot of takeaways, but my last main takeaway was the depth that Nebraska has. I think 107 players played on Saturday, which is amazing. That's what you want. Obviously, if you're beating a team that bad, a lot of players are going to get in. So yeah, obviously you want the most players playing, but just the depth that we saw, like a guy like Malachi Coleman, who started a lot of games last year, is probably going to redshirt if they can this year, which I love because that gives him obviously an extra year. They probably wanted to redshirt him last year. He kind of came in as a raw prospect, so you probably want to redshirt him, get the most out of him. I know he's a good player. He made a lot of big plays last year, but if you can redshirt him, save him for another year, he can even play in the postseason. Obviously, if things make it that far, without losing his redshirt status. So I think that's a huge thing. And then just other than that, like the depth, like I said, Heinrich looked good, improved. The running back depth looked really good. Obviously, you have the top four guys, but then the guys below them as well. Emmett Johnson was the leading rusher, and I feel like he didn't even look the best out of all of them. So I think we have a lot of talent there, and then obviously at receiver as well. The new guys obviously did their thing with Nair and Banks, but you get guys like Jalen Lloyd involved as well. Janier and Bonner also looked really good, made some big catches. So I think the depth was amazing, and I think that's a big thing, heading in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. My last biggest thing I think is that we were 4 for 5 in the red zone, which I think is big. But the biggest thing to look at there is that they were touchdowns and not field goals.
Yeah,
And so often last year, we'd get down in the red zone and we'd kick a field goal. And, you do that over and over again, and it robs you of a lot of points. It turns games that were, let's take Colorado last year, for example, 36-14. Obviously, those were 2 touchdowns. It didn't happen in that game. But say it was, 28 to 13 with 2 field goals instead of two
right.
touchdowns. Instead, you're looking at, a 1-score game in
Yeah,
there instead of a 2-score, just based on that. And, it's usually pretty close. It's usually kicking field goals from the 10-yard line. And so it's definitely the hardest place to score is first and goal from the 10. There's no doubt about that. But to be able to like run the ball, throw the ball, keep the defense guessing down there is big right now, I feel like.
yeah, for sure. So now getting into the X factors. Obviously, this is the biggest game, obviously so far, but I feel like it's even bigger than last year's Colorado game, just because we have all the hype behind Dylan. They have all the hype behind, Shadur and Travis Hunter that they had last year. We're waiting to see how legit Colorado is this year compared to last year. Obviously, they had all the hype and then kind of fell off. So everyone's tuning in to watch, whether you're watching as a Nebraska fan, as a Colorado fan, or just as a regular fan tuning in just because the Dion effect, the Dylan Raiola effect, Shadur, Travis Hunter. So a lot of people are going to be watching, and it's the biggest game in recent memory, I think, for Nebraska for sure. You think back to, I know a lot of people are comparing it to the Miami game a few years ago. That was a huge game with Abdullah. This one's a little bit different because the wound is so fresh from last year. But my first X factor and it is the D line. Nash, Ty Robinson, Jamari Butler, Cam Linhart, MJ Sherman. MJ Sherman's more of a linebacker. Same with Prince Will. But everyone needs to rotate and continue to confuse this O line that Colorado has. It's an inexperienced O line, especially their chemistry together. They haven't played a lot of transfers, a lot of freshmen, and they need to get to Shadur. They need to get to Shadur. You saw last week, if you give him time, Jimmy Horn, Travis Hunter, they're going to get open, and it's not going to be a good thing if they find that spot. Whether we're in man coverage, if they know blow coverage, or if we're in zone and they find an open spot. If you give Shadur time, he's going to wait for those guys to get open and he's going to throw it. So, Shadur's great. He's a great quarterback. He's great when he's even better when he has time. He can improvise a little bit too if he does get under pressure, but he does wait a long time to throw. As I said, he waits for these guys to get wide open. So if Nebraska can keep him in the pocket, close down the pocket quickly, and get to him, I think we're going to have a good chance in this game. And we definitely need to get him to the ground. I know there was a play last year in the red zone that's circling a little bit now where he broke a couple sacks, scrambled a little bit, found a guy in the end zone, scored a touchdown. So we need to get him down, and I think the D-line, I would hope that the D-line is definitely making that an effort this week. Is you need to get him down. You don't just need to hit him, you need to get him down, because if you let these speedy receivers and talented receivers like Travis Hunter, find the open spot, it's gonna be tough to stop. So yeah, the D line is my biggest X factor.
Yeah, so mine, I also had a little stat on that, or not necessarily a stat, but I know last year both of Shador's touchdowns were with over 3 seconds in the pocket. He only missed, I think, one or two of his passes last year with over 3 seconds. Now, the defense did play pretty well last year in the Colorado game. I'll give it to him. But Shador played a lot better than people think. He was 31 for 42 for 400 yards and two touchdowns. Now,
Yeah.
like I said, most of those completions, I believe it was 20 of those completions were with over 3 seconds. And it was like 20 for 22 with two touchdowns with over 3 seconds. And so that means outside of that, he's almost under 50% if you don't give him more than 3 seconds. And so he is a very good quarterback, but he does tend to freak out a little bit when there's pressure. And so, like Caleb said, you got to get in there and got to get him to the ground, which leads me right into my first X factor, which I think you got to find a way to make Colorado run the ball because I think when Colorado runs the ball, it's a waste of down against us, right?
Yeah.
And so if they run the ball on first down, it's anywhere from 2nd and 11 to 2nd and 9, right? That's a waste of down. If they threw that ball, it might be 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 4, and then that's a pretty good down. You got to make them run the ball on second down, force third and longs. They're really good at third and longs, don't get me wrong, but third and longs is where we bring our pressure as well. And so you got to force them to run the ball. As crazy as it sounds, that's definitely what we want them to do.
Yeah. So my next X factor is the secondary, and it's going to be super important in this game. And Nebraska does not need to lock up these receivers. I honestly think that's asking too much. I mean, you're not going to. I know Colorado fans are saying this is the best receiver room in the country. I don't know if I'd go that far. It's a little early for that, but it's very talented. Definitely one of the best in their conference for sure. And they got probably the best. I wouldn't say the best, but one of the top 5 receivers in the country, top 3 probably. You got the Arizona receiver, and then you got Travis Hunter probably right there, arguably next. But you need to contain them long enough. As I said, it kind of connects to my first one. You need to contain them long enough for the D-line to get home. You don't need to pad off. You don't need to press them all the time. You need to mix it up. You need to mix zone and man. Obviously, you can't run zone. They're going to find the spots. You can't run man all the time. They're going to get beat over the top. And you definitely can't leave Travis Hunter on a one-on-one island. I don't care who's on him. Obviously, you feel pretty good about Tommy Hill on him, but Travis Hunter is one of the best players in the country. So you're going to see some big plays. So if Nebraska can contain these receivers for about 2.5 seconds on average, I feel good about the game because I feel like the D-line can have some success getting to Shedeur. So if Tommy Hill, Buford, I know Hartzog got beat over the top last game. I think that was kind of fluky more than it was kind of a concern for me. Those kind of things just happen. Those things are going to happen in this game. I just hope we can keep it to a minimum. And, if we give up one big touchdown this game, other than that, we kind of keep them contained. I feel pretty good. So the secondary is my second X factor.
Yeah, so my second one is this is going to be a little odd. I know it's not going to be everyone's favorite thing to say, but the entire quarterback room, right? So Dylan is great, right? Dylan is a really good passer. Dylan can see a defense better than anyone that's played at Nebraska in a very, very long time. He's a great leader. There's a lot of things that he does better than most quarterbacks that we've ever seen come through this school in like I said, a very long time. But at the end of the day, we saw what Cam Miller was able to do to this Colorado offense when he was able to run the ball. And so if Heinrich has to come in and, run a read option on 3rd and 4, I'm okay with that because I know that Heinrich can throw the ball. And so say Heinrich comes in on a 3rd and 4 and it's a play action on a read option. I mean, Colorado's going to sell out for that read option because they think Heinrich's running the ball because he can so well. But I think being able to use, both quarterbacks, obviously Dylan should play probably 90% of the snaps, but that other 10% can definitely be played by Heinrich as well. And so I feel like running both quarterbacks to some extent in this game will help us. Just watching what Cam Miller is able to do against Colorado last week.
Yeah, so I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. because last week you saw Cam Miller playing great, and
Mhm.
then they bring in another quarterback, and it kind of just stalls the drive because they knew he was going to run. They knew he's a running guy, and if you're going to throw a play action pass anyway, don't you want your passing quarterback in there? Like I get the
Well, yes,
idea. I get the idea
but
that it's that you're kind of want them to think that you're running it, and then you hit a shot. I can see like a trick play, like one trick play in the game. But I don't think, like, if we're in a 3rd and 1, I don't think it's an automatic thing. Like, bring Heinrich in because he's a better runner. Like, I
well,
think
no,
you
no.
need to keep the options available. And if Heinrich does come in, you can kind of sell out to the run a little bit because he's not as good of a passer as Dylan is. But if Dylan's in, obviously you don't have the threat of Heinrich running that you do with Dylan, but you have the threat of it could be a run or a pass. So you kind of got to stay on a balanced defense.
And I guess more of that, outside of just using both quarterbacks is like I do feel like the way to beat a team like Colorado, because last year, if you look at Colorado's defense, they were in cover one man. I don't know, 75, 80% of the time, and that's throughout the entire season, right? And so they are very, very good at what they do, but they're also slightly one dimensional. Offensively, they're going to throw the ball, they're going to throw it deep, and, they're going to throw a couple screens. Defensively, they're going to find a formation that works. And like I said, they're very good at the deep ball, they're very good at screens, and they're very good at that one defense they run. But you got to mix it up with a team like this. You got a jet sweep here. It can't just be power short pass, deep pass. That's what NDSU does, and they do an excellent job at it. And they obviously did a pretty good job of it. But you could see towards the end of the game, Colorado kind of figured that out, and Colorado, found a way to win that game. With us, if we, against UTEP, it was really good. It did seem a little one dimensional, but I also think that was partly Matt Rule, keeping a lot of that stuff under wraps. But I think, mixing it up here and there is big, whether that's at the quarterback position, wide receiver position, running back position, a fullback in there, different tight ends in there that can do different things. It's all super important.
Yeah, and mixing it up is a great point. And before I get to my last X factor, I do want to talk about on defense. Um, I do think Nebraska's going to mix it up a lot. I don't know if you saw the stat. Nebraska didn't blitz once against UTEP, not a single blitz, and they got a lot of pressure. I know a lot of people talk about, oh, there was like one sack the entire game. That's a misleading stat. The UTEP was getting the ball out, a second, and that was obviously the game plan. You can't let these D linemen get home. The thing with Colorado is that's not going to work for them. They like to have these long developing routes, so their game plan is going to be a little bit different. So I would expect the D line to look little bit better, and it looked dominant on last Saturday. So no, I'm not worried about that at all. I think they're going to mix it up, and I think they're going to mix it up on offense as well. I just kind of push back on the idea that in order to mix it up, you have to do something so drastically different. And bringing in both guys, I definitely agree that Heinrich has to be ready to play, because anything can happen, and I think he will be ready to play. And I think he will play. I think he'll play in some packages. We saw him last week, before we subbed out the entire starting O. He did come in for it was at least one play. I don't know if he came in multiple plays, but it was one play on the goal line. Didn't end up working, but I do like the idea of kind of getting him involved, keeping things fresh, keeping Dylan fresh. So yeah, he definitely needs to be ready to play. And I definitely think that Nebraska needs to mix it up. So I agree with you there. But my last X factor, it's a little bit different. Not a player, not a thing the team needs to do. It's the fans. So this Colorado team, has not played in an environment like they're walking into on Saturday. Last year, Oregon was their most hostile environment, and Nebraska Stadium holds over 30,000 more fans than Oregon's does. Oregon's only holds 54,000, while Nebraska's holds up to 85,000. So my big thing, we saw it last week. We saw it happen in that first drive. Nebraska fans need to be so loud. There's going to be false starts. There's going to be at least one false start. There's going to be delay games. Freshman left tackle Jordan Seaton, the biggest crowd he's probably played in front of is a big high school crowd, which is what, 3,000 people, maybe? Nebraska's going to have, I don't even know the math, to do it 30 times more than that. Even more than that. Yeah, like
Yeah, maybe 30 times.
yeah, like not even close. to what he's ever played with. So the QB, Shadur, is going to have trouble hearing in the headset. They said last week that Matt Rule couldn't even hear in the headset, and he was trying to listen on offense. So I definitely think Shadur is going to have a tough time hearing in the headset. And we definitely need to make that a factor. We also need to be quiet like usual when our team's on offense. But Nebraska's crowd needs to make a major effect in this game, and I think they will. And it needs to be all throughout the game. You know, if Colorado hits a big play, so what? Be loud the next one. You know, on a big third down, you cannot be quiet. You cannot be quiet. Don't be on your phones. Be on the game. Be loud. Shadur should not be able to hear at all. You know, these are the mental mistakes that make and break this game. And that's why Nebraska has such a big home field advantage, and why multiple quarterbacks have said the hardest place they've ever had to play is Nebraska, because these fans are crazy, and in a good way, and especially in a night game against a hated rival. I think they're going to be a big factor.
Yeah, my final X factor is one that I feel like we've seen improvement on this year. We didn't use it a ton in UTEP, so it's hard to see, but that's special teams. I think you take kickoff and kick return out of it, because I don't think that's really a part of the college game anymore, with the being able to fair catch it anywhere in the 25.
I can see. Okay, so I can see what you mean on kickoffs. I think punt returns are a big deal, and
So that's what I was gonna say.
I think Ja'Cory Barney is legit.
Yeah, so kickoff and kick return, I don't. But punt return, punt, and field goal is, I think, where you win the game. A team like Colorado is not a team that takes, methodical drives and drives 80 yards down the field and scores. To be able to do that, they're going to need a 30 or 40-yard play in there. They're not going to, get you chipping away 5-6, 5-6, 5-6, things like that. And so if you can pin them, obviously we're not going to score every drive. And so when you can pin them, it's definitely something you need to do. Don't be surprised if this game comes down to a field goal, or a couple field goals. Their defense is not great up front, but their secondary, Travis Hunter is good. I think Shiloh Sanders is not very good. I'm probably Shiloh Sanders' biggest hater. But overall, like they actually can cover the pass. And so if we get to, a 3rd and 8 and we're on the 25-yard line and we don't convert, we got to be able to go out there and we got to get some points. Definitely can't just give up the ball right there, because you get a couple field goals in a spot where, you weren't going to get any. Then next thing you know, those points start adding up, and that's how you win close football games. I think that's why over the past few years we've seen a Nebraska with a pretty good offense with Adrian Martinez. We've seen a Nebraska with a really good defense last year, obviously, but we continue to lose these close games. And, that thing that's the common denominator with that is we'd never have a really good special teams. We can never send a kicker out there and be like, oh, we're going to drill this, or a punter out there like, oh, yeah, he's going to pin them, or a punt return, right? We used to fair catch every ball, or we used to not fair catch a single ball, but not have any plan to return it either. And so now that we have a real punt return, a good field goal unit, a good punt team, I think that's going to push us farther than, offense, defense, a lot of these things, that people look at.
Yeah, and before we get to our score predictions, I did want to shout out Brian Buschini, because he struggled last year. I don't want to say struggled, but we had high hopes for him. He was the FCS punter of the year, and then he came over to Nebraska, did well his first year, kind of struggled a little bit last year. But in that first game, against UTEP, I don't know how many, we had hardly any punts, but the ones he did hit, he hit well, and he placed them where he wanted to. Our field goal unit was obviously great. I think we only had to kick like 2 field goals all game. Kickoff unit was great. A lot of people were screaming down. Ja'Cory Barney, he's going to break one. The dude's electric. IGC, not as electric as Ja'Cory Barney, but he's willing to return it, and he's a full-grown man back there. He's over 200 pounds. I think he's like 6'3", so not your usual punt returner, but he's legit back there as well, and he wants to return. I think there's a stat where Nebraska last game already has over half of the punt return yards that we had the entire season last year. So that's a
Yeah.
big plus.
Well, I don't think that IGC is necessarily back there returning punts to Devin Hester take him back to the
Right.
house every single time. I think he's back there because, like you said, he's 6'3", 220 pounds. He's not going to give up the ball, right? Even if he messes up and forgets to call a fair catch and catches it and gets drilled, he's a big enough guy where he'll just hold on to it. Or if
Right.
we run a bad return, and he gets hit a couple times, he's gonna hold on to it, right? He's a guy back there that you can just trust to keep the ball. Punt returns on 90% of teams are not made to be a scoring play or even a high yardage play. It's literally just made to secure the ball. And so I think that's
Right.
why he's out there.
Yeah. He's also fast though. I think he hit like
Yes,
20,
yes.
22 miles an hour in full pads in a practice this year. So yeah, no, he's fast. He can move. I don't think he has the electric ability that Ja'Cory Barney has, and I cannot wait to see what Ja'Cory Barney does this week. He was so close to breaking one last week, and I think he's going to break one this season. I don't know if it'll be this week. It would be so cool if it was. It would be electric. But all right, getting into our score predictions. First, starting out with Vegas. Nebraska is currently a 7.5 point favorite. I think Nebraska opened up as a 6.5 point favorite before week one, moved to a 7 after Nebraska's game, and then after after Colorado's game, moved to a 7 after Nebraska's game. I think it stayed at a 7, and since then it's moved to 7.5 as of Wednesday night when we're recording this, with an over-under of 59. So Vegas is projecting a 33-26 win for Nebraska. And Zach, I think you're going to have a lot of words, to say about this. I think you're going to get into it a little bit. So I'm going to go first, but I think Nebraska finds a lot of success in the run game for sure. Not only running the game though, but I think taking some deep shots, find success on defense, getting to Shadur as I've talked about. I think it starts slow. I think, after the first quarter, it could be 7-7, maybe even at halftime, it's 14-7, 21-14, something like that. But I think as the game goes on, Nebraska's built to, break down this team. And I think the final score is something like, my final score prediction is 34-17 Nebraska. Scoring over 30 points was unheard of last year. We've already done it once this year, and I think we do it again against Colorado. We could have scored 70 last week. We kind of pulled back the reins. Obviously, I mean, that's what everybody does, and I think that's kind of what we're going to do here. I think Nebraska kind of breaks this open in the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter, it just kind of keeps the ball the entire time. So for me, Nebraska's minus 7.5 hits, the under hits. But yeah, Zach, I'm excited to hear what you think.
Yeah, I actually do think it's going to be a little closer than that, than the 34-17. As much as I actually don't like Shadur, I do respect him. I do think he's a really good quarterback. Now, there's people out there that say he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I don't think that's true. I think guys like, Carson Beck at Georgia, Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, Quinn Ewers at Texas, Cam Rising at Utah. There's plenty out there that I can name. Jalen Milroe at Alabama that are actually, I believe, much better than him. I think Cam Ward at Miami is better than Shadur. Now, when you look at Travis Hunter, honestly, like Travis Hunter's a good guy. I actually have nothing bad to say about Travis Hunter other than he does play at Colorado, and I can't fault the guy. He's definitely gonna be the best player on the field at any point in time, whether it's offense or defense on Saturday. He very well could be the best player as far as football player goes in the entire country. Um, but at the same time, I don't think Colorado's D line is good. I don't think Colorado's O line is good. I don't think Colorado's run game is good. I think Shiloh Sanders is a dirty player that gets hyped up all over the place. I think he's a bad safety. I think 60% of his hits are either late or out of bounds or unnecessary. But I do think that Colorado's secondary and offense has the ability to keep this game close. I don't think they have the ability to stop a 4 cycle gauntlet of running backs that are just consistently fresh. My final score prediction, I had it at 28-17, so a little bit lower scoring earlier, but Now at 31-20, I do think there's two more field goals in there that, I'm not accounting for. I think Colorado's kicker is actually pretty good. I think we
It's
get close.
accurate. Yeah.
He's very accurate. I think we get close enough that our kicker has easy, field goals to make. But like Caleb said, this game could easily be, I mean, we could be up, 21 17 at half, right? We could be down 14-17 at half. And I think this game will still go in our favor. Because games like this late in the third quarter, when you got Shadur getting hit, I think we get, dang near 15 sacks in this game. Maybe not 15, but I think we had 9 last year, and I think it was
7.
okay. We had 7 last year, and I think there's a lot of times that we could have got to them. Maybe it won't be dang near 15, but I think 10, 10 to 12 is definitely a number to strive for because I think this O line might have digressed from last year, and it wasn't very good last year. Shadur is going to run around, but I think our D line is much more experienced. Last year, we kind of let him run around. We were chasing him. This year, I think we're going to kind of close the pocket and it's going to collapse. It's going to definitely take away all his breathing room in there. And yeah, over time, I think we're just going to go down and win this game the hard way and what they say, the Nebraska way. And that's just like hard-nosed defense, hard-nosed offense. And then being able to throw the ball and keep them honest as well. So yeah, 31-20. So for me, the under hits, but Nebraska does take the spread here at -7.5.
Yeah. So before I do have one more question, but before we get into that, I want to make sure that I mention one of the points I had that I didn't get to mention before. If Nebraska is even or wins the turnover battle in this game, I think there's a 0% chance Colorado wins.
Yeah.
I think the only way Colorado wins is if we, give them an extra possession or just keep shooting ourselves in the foot. If we keep driving down to the red zone, but we keep throwing a pick or fumbling, yeah, things are going to go Colorado's way. But if we play a clean game, if the running backs play a clean game, I think Colorado has absolutely no chance. The matchup just screams that Nebraska should win this game. I think I'm a little traumatized from the past 7 years of Nebraska, where it's like everything is pointing that we should win this game, but something in the back of my mind is like, but you've never won this game, So it's like, Nebraska should win this game, and I think they will. Obviously, with both of our score predictions, we both predict that Nebraska even covers the 7.5 spread. So,
yeah, I've seen everyone pretty much say either Nebraska goes out and does what they're supposed to do and they win this game handily and it's not even that close, or the bad happens and Colorado wins it by a couple points. And so I think those are really the two options. There's no really in between. I don't think Nebraska's going out there and winning a 1-point game. I think we're either handily winning this as we should, or Colorado takes it by a point.
Right. So the last question I had: do you think? And I wanted to ask you this because you're going to be there. Do you think Nebraska fans should charge the field if they win the game?
I don't. Not at all. I do think it's a turning point, though, and Nebraska's football timeline, because outside of it being a huge rival, being a big night game, it's a game like you said that we're supposed to win, but very easily could lose. But it's all the eyes are watching. It's a night game. It's your must win, right? All the must win games in the last few years we've found a way to lose. But it just feels like these guys, you listen to interviews of these guys and just the way they talk, they sound like guys that are they expect to win and they know how to win versus hoping to win, right? There's a huge difference. Right. Yeah, I mean, I really hope we go out and win this week versus oh, I know we're gonna win. I know how to win. It's just about executing. And there's a huge difference in that, and I think that's now the culture and the standard.
Yeah, no, definitely.
You think it's a huge turning point, but no, I don't think he's rushed the field for this. Colorado's a team that's much worse than us. I think you don't need to give Colorado more hype than they deserve. Rushing the field would just give them a bunch of attention that they want, that we definitely don't want to give them. Beating a team. I don't think there's a home game this year that you really storm it for. Ohio State, but obviously that's there.
Right.
So there's not
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
that you storm it for.
Yeah.
Plus, that stadium is so hard to storm. It's
No, it is.
you have
Yeah.
to you have to jump down like a 10-foot wall and then like over a 5-foot fence and then like I've stormed the field at Kinnick, Iowa's stadium before, and that's easy because literally a 3-foot wall that you just step over and then you're on the
Right.
field. So
Yeah.
that's easy. That's easy. But here, yeah, I mean, people would get legitimately hurt if we start storming this field.
Yeah. No, it'd be tough. Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I wouldn't be mad if they stormed it. But I can see both ways because it is a turning point, like you said. But make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like.
If they do storm it, we will get footage. I'll tell you that
Yeah.
much. We will
Yeah, there you
definitely-
go. We'll have that in the next episode if that happens. But make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, hit the bell. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all linked in the description. Make sure you watch the Bet the Mortgage episode coming out on Friday with all of our best picks. We're undefeated on the year. So, yeah, until next time, go Big Red.